Lab. Um, I am JT Russell, and here tonight with a man who is a legend in the film industry, due in large part to his famed audition for the movie Animal House, wherein, after receiving 3,456 whacks with the fraternity rod, turned to the camera and delivered his line, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" It is Quick Draw 3457. Hello, Quick Draw.
Hey, how are you, JT? Happy Tuesday once again.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. So, here we are. What do we have in store for us this evening?
So, we are going to just talk for an hour about how I beat Not Tonight in the Fantasy League.
There were no shenanigans at play.
Yeah, we had to do some recalculating, but I believe I still technically won. Is that the final verdict,
You
or is it a
know,
tie?
we go by the sheet as it lies at the end of the season, and I mean, same point total, but the sorting gods placed you ahead of Not Tonight. So there you have it.
Love it. Yeah, I didn't care about this matchup until I started winning. So yeah, I care about this greatly. This is very important to me.
Very important to you. It started out as kind of a joke because I think she was, top three in the standings at the beginning of the fantasy league, and I want to say you were hugging the bottom, but
No, I was not hugging the bottom. I was the bottom. I had I had 1 point in each of the first 2 weeks, which makes the comeback even more miraculous.
I love it. I love it. And then week over week, you all kind of edged closer and closer, and then I mean a perfect finish, exact same point total to end the season. How about
Yeah.
that?
She must have been talking trash behind my back. Is that right?
Almost undoubtedly. Yeah.
Well, sorry to disappoint people. We are not going to talk about a fantasy pool for the entire episode today.
Hmm.
We are going to talk about another one of our favorite double-sided artifacts. We're going to talk about Soul Snatcher. And the the deck you're currently showcasing on stream is actually not even one that either of us own, which is not even anyone from Sloppy Lab Work. It's just a deck that we both admire. It I've played against it before in a Kagi League and really enjoyed it. You've had some really great games with your Soul Snatcher decks against me, and it's just ever since I've played against this one and some of yours that we're going to talk about, I've been on the hunt for some good ones myself. I have a few candidates that I kind of like, but for some reason I can't win with them. So maybe I'll learn something tonight and start to win games with them.
Yeah, love it. And it's one of those cards too where, you know, maybe win rate in Open Archon is not the final metric because you can make a case for this being a great addition to your adaptive or Newton deck of choice. Makes for some very funky brews and interesting game states that can be tough to evaluate. Hmm.
Yeah, it's we've talked a lot in this show about double-sided artifacts. We all have a huge love for them. This is one where you sometimes want to discard it. Sometimes it's a huge benefit for you. We'll talk a bit about that and what situations it might be good. Um, I didn't have any Soul Snatcher decks almost at all until I started playing at some of these like really cool combos and started to think about the potential that it has. Um, so I am on the hunt. Some of like the ideal dreams that you think of like double Soul Snatcher with double Rad Penny and two Seeker Needles or something like that. I think there's like one that exists like that. Like there's dreams out there like that. But there's also lots more in between that, like you said, could be really good adaptive decks. That's one of the first times I played against it was in Kagi, a semifinal game against the deck we're looking at, which we've determined is pronounced Mademoiselle K. Alapan. It is an English deck. But what's so cool about it, in addition to the Soul Snatcher, obviously, is like the Crassosaurus, the Axiom of Grisk, the Harbinger to trigger a lot of that stuff. Um, it's very tricky to play with and against. And I think if I don't remember my matchup very well with it in Kagi, but I think there was a game where it was a discard and another game where it was like a total game changer. Which is what kind of like what I love about the card so much is it makes it so great to have a unique situation where you really have to evaluate the board and what might be happening the next few turns to see if it's a good card to play. I think in that way it differentiates itself a lot from like Whirlpool, which I think if you're playing a Whirlpool deck, you're always going to want to play the Whirlpool almost, um, except in rare circumstances where your opponent might have more capture than you. But this is a different one where this is like I think a next level of strategy that goes along with it.
Hmm. Yeah, couldn't have said it better. There are definitely decks that want to see Soul Snatcher. There are decks that you probably aren't going to play Soul Snatcher that often, or it's going to more often be a discard, and that'll be maybe something we get into too. But I think it's also, very situational dependent. You're like what you touched on. Even a deck that loves Soul Snatcher may find situations where, like, gosh, I just can't play it. I'm either too behind on the board, or for whatever reason, situationally it's no longer a play. And I like that there is an element of strategic depth to the decision making process. It may not even be obvious from the current board state whether it's a play or a discard. It may be what's left in deck and what's left in their deck. And how close are we to key 3 and whose turn is it? A lot of these things can really factor in heavily to whether or not this is a player or not.
So let's start with, what do you look for when you're playing a Soul Snatcher deck, or rather when you're looking for one, whether it's in your collection or on the secondary market?
Hmm. So I did pull together a few of my own decks to consider here, and I do want to get into the good Mademoiselle as well. But just from my own side, my absolute favorite Soul Snatcher deck is one that I've talked about here before. It is the one and only oddly nefarious Carl, and nefarious indeed. This deck features Soul Snatcher, double key to dis, so you've got a board wipe for maximum soul snatching, and then you've also got an interdimensional graft and too much to protect. So you've got scaling steel, scaling amber control options in both logos and shadows. And what's nice about the key to dis is that you can wipe the board in either of those houses. So this is a deck that's leaning into the Soul Snatcher, right? It's not sort of trying to passively take advantage of it, but it's doing it in a way that I think is unique. So I don't know if this is maybe a category of Soul Snatcher deck or just a uniqueness to Carl in particular. But features that it has, which I am often looking for, are scaling steel, right? You want to not let your opponent just run away with your own Soul Snatcher, so you want to have some way to punish them if they do that, whether that's the Graft or TMTP or the Effervescent Principle that's in here as well. You may also want to have a way to take advantage of the Soul Snatcher en masse, just cash in on the board. So those key to disses are great. There obviously are going to be situations where you can't play your board wipe, but having it in there gives you an option to really take advantage of it if you get the opportunity. And then the absolute dream is the Secret Needles and Pennies, right? And this deck features triple Secret Needle, but alas, no penny. And how often do you say, "Oh my goodness, I wish there was a bad penny in this deck"?
It's so true, and you mean it too. Like, you're dead serious.
Mm-hmm.
Carl is one of my favorite decks that you own. This is such a cool deck. I don't remember the first time I played against it, but I was like kind of mesmerized by it because, you mentioned the scaling amber control. The effervescent principle was like sort of a last resort, sort of an out. But you have three different ways of, triggering the key to dis and then taking away a bunch of their amber, with the graft and the TMTP as well. But what I love about the key to disses here, there's two of them, which is crazy, but they're omnis, which means that you, like, whatever you're looking for, if you have scaling, it's not enough to have a board wipe and a TMTP, for example, because you need to have them the same turn. And a lot of decks will have like a gateway to dis and a TMTP, but no way to play them in the same turn. Maybe you'll have like a master plan if you're lucky, but that's like asking for a lot to come together, I think. But this is great because the key to dis are the omni effects. So you can just wait for the right time to do it and then wipe the board. That's such a game changer, I think, with the Soul Snatcher. And then the other thing that I like about this deck is that if you end up in a situation where you're thinking like, I don't think I can get any more value out of the Soul Snatcher, this is bad for me, you have two Poltergeist to take care of it if you ever need to get it off the board. So this deck has, it's almost like, the what's what of like what you're looking for with Soul Snatcher and Coda. Super cool deck. If only it had a bad penny.
If only it had a bad penny. And the one kind of knock against this deck, and this is a really interesting point too, is the low creature count, right? And that leads to, I've played reversal games using this deck and seen folks discard the Soul Snatcher, maybe not seeing the combo-y lines, but the Soul Snatcher is absolutely a play 99% of the time. I mean, exaggeration, sure, but by far and away, barring a strong reason not to, you're playing the Soul Snatcher. I've seen people discard it just because they see that 13 creature count and assume that it's going to be better for the opponent than for them. I think as a general rule, you're probably going to want higher creature counts when playing Soul Snatcher. That doesn't necessarily need to be true, but is a bonus. Maybe 13 is on the low end. But everything you said, absolutely right. I think this is a little bit of a unicorn, but there is probably a class of Soul Snatcher deck that is trying to push their opponent's Amber total up for profit in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about creature count. So if we both agree that scaling Amber control is like a huge thing to have with Soul Snatcher, but if you can't have that, you're looking for high creature counts. Like what's an ideal number for you for like the sweet spot for a pretty good Archon? Obviously, you don't want like 26, 27 creatures
Mm-hmm.
because your deck's going to struggle in other ways. But like, what's a good number that you're looking for?
That's a great question, and I think there's kind of two ways you can go with this. So there's a lot of creatures. I want volume and sort of want them to be expendable, or you don't want them to be expendable, but they can be, and that's what my second deck kind of fits in this category. So 18 creatures feels like about right. You can supplement that with some efficiency. So this one does have a 17 score on the efficiency. Lots of helper bots, Igors, some archiving and handcrafting abilities there. And this deck, contrasted with Carl, is really trying to just spam out creatures and cash in on them when they die. So you're like, you know what? I'm just going to throw bodies out. Maybe they'll attack, maybe they'll reap, or not. But I've got things like throwing stars to hit my own helper bot, right? So the dream there is you've got Soul Snatcher, you throw down some helper bots, you throw some stars at them, and all of a sudden you're doubling up on those helper bots, burning through your deck, and getting 2 amber apiece, which is pretty nice. Things like Charette or Dust Imp are great too. The Charette's being a way to stall and also providing a target. So I like having creatures that incentivize my opponent to fight and kill them, or just try and kill them some other way. So you're kind of saying, okay, here's a threat you need to deal with, or here's a creature you're going to want to deal with, and BT dubs when you finally do. Thank you very much for that, Amber. Is kind of nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got a nice bunch of burst opportunities there in Dis. Like you play a Dust Imp, then you play a Scullion, and you're gaining 3 for that then.
Mm-hmm.
Then you exhume that Dust Imp, and you're ready to just kill it again for another 3 amber. So, and then like you said, the helper bots and the throwing stars, that's like easy money right there.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely has some really cool burst potential in here if you get it. And it's got the graft.
And it's got the graft. So yeah, this is a cool deck. I've played it a bunch to middling success. Obviously, it's only got 4.6 creature control, though. It's questionable how often I guess it's not questionable. This deck would love a board wipe, right? But
Yeah.
You could make an argument. One could make an argument that if my plan is to go wide and dare my opponent to deal with my board, maybe you can skate by without as much creature control in some scenarios. Though when this deck loses, it is often due to its lack of board control ability. But
Yeah, I like to have creature control with my Soul Snatcher as well.
mm-hmm.
It might sound counterintuitive, I think, but I just like to have that ability to either give them the amber whenever I want them to have it at the right time, or to give myself a bunch as a way of bursting. Obviously, it's going to be totally situational. You don't ever want to give them like a third key, things like that. But I think we can probably agree in general having the option of creature control is better than not.
Mm-hmm.
And with Soul Snatcher, I think the potential gains from that is even more.
Absolutely. And I know you asked about creature count, but I think there's sort of a third class of decks that utilizes the Soul Snatcher, and this is sort of a more passive utilization. So whereas Vamstar here has lots of small bodies that it's looking to actively get rid of, right? You're looking to throw stars at your helper bots. You're looking to cash in on that Dust Imp for additional value. There is a class of deck that's saying, hey, I'm going to just put some high value targets out, and you can deal with them. You're going to have to go out of your way to deal with them, but you can deal with them, and then I'm going to kind of get something back, recover some value, thanks to the Soul Snatcher when you do. Murphy Bishopland's Protector is kind of the example that I thought of with that respect. So this is a deck that features Witch of the Wilds, Tesmal, double Exhume, and triple Glimmer. as well as a Nature's
Mm.
Call. So you've obviously got the Glimlock, but with the Glimmer and Exhumes combined, you're very often playing that Witch of the Wilds many, many times. Uh, and whether it's via Exhume or recursed via Glimmer, and hopefully, as they are able to deal with it, if they are, you get to get some Soul Snatcher monies for your troubles. Similarly, for the Aubade or Gatekeeper, you throw these creatures out that are collecting amber. They have to deal with it. They finally do. Okay, great. Now I'm going to exhume Gatekeeper again, and the dance continues. I don't know if this is the best example of such a deck, but it was kind of the best one I had to reach for. Maybe Mademoiselle is an even better of that case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Fudginator's in the chat now too. Maybe he's interested in the, AK Murphy deck. I don't know.
Oh, there you go.
That's a
Murphy
pretty cool one
proficiency.
too.
Mm-hmm.
I always love myself some Glimmer Nature's Call. This one's got lots of it, so that's a pretty cool one. Um, I brought a few examples that I'd like to share now. The first one I'll ask you to pull up is Kyra Volcano Spider.
Mm-hmm.
This is one, I was looking out for the scaling amber control like we talked about. Definitely wanted to have some creature control as well. Like I said before, I don't have a great win percentage with any of my Soul Snatcher decks, so maybe I'm doing something wrong. But like with this one in particular, I really feel like it has potential out there, and it's just been pretty complex to learn. So I'm really eager to play it more and learn it more. But the interesting thing here is that it doesn't quite have the creature control that I want. It has no way of killing the Harbinger of Doom on a Logos turn. I think a wild wormhole getting lucky is like the only thing. Even that, I'm not really sure if there's even like a good way of doing that. But it does have one trick, which is nice for adaptive, is that you can use the Mimic Gel on the Harbinger of Doom to set up the interdimensional graph turn. So um, it's a little bit trickier, and sometimes it takes a little bit of setup, but often if you have the Soul Snatcher out and you have the Harbinger out, they're going to hold off on killing it for fear of the interdimensional graft. And so if they hold off long enough on killing that, you come out with the Mimic Gel, and then they might be in a situation where they're like, well, I guess it's out of my hands now at this point, and then you can try to set up the graph that way. It's got some Ronnies as well, which is great for this. Any kind of scaling amber control in that way is good too. Double Evil Eye, so there is some other ways to take advantage of it. It just has oddly it's been very close to winning a lot of its games, but still loses anyway, which is interesting to me. And I don't know if that means it's bad or if it just means that there's always going to be like small decisions that you make over the course of a game that are going to make a difference. And that's how this one's felt to me, is that it has a lot of ceiling for me to explore. And that's kind of what's cool about the Soul Snatcher in general. But this is a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
You've played against it once or twice.
I have, and I definitely experienced the pieces you were just describing. Not only did the combo surprise me, so I had left the Harbinger out, thinking like, oh gosh, I can't kill this Harbinger. I'm gonna pass the turn, and then Great Grafted, and then lo and behold, that Mimic Shell comes down. And all game you were looking at this Mimic Gel saying, oh, it's going to be another Ronnie, it's going to be double Lord Invidious shenanigans, but then no, it's a Harbinger, and you realize you've made a terrible mistake.
I I really love that game. That game was so much fun just to
Mm-hmm.
to see your reaction when you're just like, oh, you just realize what happened after it came out. I think I ended up maybe losing that game closely. I don't remember exactly, but um, that's kind of like what this deck has done, where it's like it does great things and it gets so close, and then it just barely comes up short, and you have to figure out what you can do better with it, which is super cool to me.
I can't remember if it was Newton or Adaptive that we played this. Might have been Adaptive. Um, but I remember this being the like, gosh, I wish Thorium Plasmate could hit my own creatures deck.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What else can you say? But yeah,
Yeah.
um, just when you thought that card couldn't get worse, you realize you can't kill your own creatures with it.
Hmm. And like, it's asking a lot too. I was willing to double plasmate my own Harbinger, but
Yeah,
no thanks. No
I
thanks,
know.
says the game. Yeah. But yeah, the Evil Eyes are great. They pinch in very well to punish. Absolutely. Ronnies are great. Yeah, this was a really cool deck, and I definitely had a moment of delight and surprise, even while realizing that it was I was going to be in a hole when this came together. So that was very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. I have one other I want to share, and then we have a couple other interesting questions and topics to get to. This one is Canard Crow. This one is a pretty interesting Worlds Collide deck because it has Brobnar in it. This is not worthless. And I've been playing this one in Exchange. I'm not sure if we've talked about Exchange format on this, but Exchange is when you bring two decks and you and your opponent evaluate each other's two decks and you each steal one, and then you play a best of three with your two remaining decks. It is a very complex format when you're evaluating decks and thinking about it and like which decks to bring to it. I think people tend to bring stronger decks than they should. I've talked this out a lot with some sanctimonious folks, and the conclusion was for Exchange, you bring two weak decks because the only games that matter in an Exchange match are the games between the two weakest decks. Everything else does not matter. We could probably do an episode on Exchange sometime if it ever comes back as a relevant format in contemporary tournament times. But for now, let's leave it at that. This is one that I like to bring to Exchange with another deck that's around the same power level because of the Soul Snatcher, but also you can see there's a really nice Brobnar Maverick in there, which is a too much to protect. And I have a visual aid for this one, and I hope we can get a good shot of this one because I know people like to see some Mavericks, and
Oh,
DataForge Stream is here. Zoc is a big fan of Mavericks. I hope that's a good picture
ooh,
for
and
people
it's
to
got
see.
a. Oh, I almost said it has an enhancement, but it's the Brobnar logo. Looks like a extra pip there, but super cool.
Yeah, it
That
is
is super
a
cool.
very cool Maverick to have, Brobnar TMTP. And a lot of the creature controlling here comes from the Brobnar fighting, so you can just fight off a bunch of guys, kill them, and then TMTP it, and you're feeling pretty good. So this is a fun deck, great for the format, takes advantage of it a bit. But I don't think it quite leans into it. It still has 12 pips for a pretty low SAS deck, and it does some decent things. So this is one where it's obviously not going to be like a Archon competitive deck, but in the right format, it can do some neat tricks. Has a lot of strategy involved with it, and it's got a pretty too much to protect card to go with it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Always really cool too when you can find a deck that has sort of a Maverick as a linchpin in some of the more spicy lines, you know. So that's really cool and a very nice touch, and also awesome that you were able to find something, you know, to balance against it for an Exchange match. I do recall playing those games and remember them being really close and deep and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my go-to. Had my team made the playoffs for EBR, I was going to be playing Exchange with this one. We did not make it. We lost on tiebreakers, as did the Red Key Imps, your team.
Hmm.
So heartbreaking weekend for us, but now I can share all my secrets of Canard Crow and Exchange.
Well, and yeah, I will say that Exchange is on our list, our backlog of topics. But yeah, general plug too. If anybody has a thing they'd like to see us cover, shoot us a message. We'll
Yeah,
throw it in. Cool.
definitely. So you were talking before as we were kind of gathering notes in the show, different types of Soul Snatcher decks, like an active one versus a passive. Sometimes
Hmm.
your deck really needs the Soul Snatcher. Sometimes it's just kind of like a backup plan. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and I think seeing some of these key cards that we have mentioned already kind of allude to those different deck types, but there's the deck that really leans into its Soul Snatcher, right? It's trying to actively get rid of its own creatures for value, and I want to say that, well, along with the combo decks, these are the ones that are most dependent on the Soul Snatcher itself. So the deck that I showed a little while ago, Vamstar Bulwark, right? This triple helper bot, throwing stars, dust imp deck plays fine without the Soul Snatcher. You know, it's not coming home with a blue ribbon in an Archon Open event, but it can put up a decent fight. But with the Soul Snatcher on board, it's capable of some really potent bursts. And so this is a deck that I would classify as one that actively leans into its Soul Snatcher. Its game plan really revolves around taking advantage of the artifact, itself, rather than waiting on the opponent to give you that value from your creatures dying.
So you're saying if this one doesn't have the Soul Snatcher early, then it's going to just struggle and doesn't really do much of anything that's special?
It's going to struggle. It's not going to. It's definitely playing a much weaker game than it would otherwise, which you could say for most of these, I suppose. But I think more so than the decks that are passively utilizing the Soul Snatcher, it's going to struggle. It's sort of a component, a key component in its plan A, if you will. Mm-hmm.
So show us an example then of one that you think is more passive.
So I think of Murphy as one that's more passive, right? So I'm not really trying to destroy my own creatures. I'm playing them out. I'm hoping to reap with them. If they get destroyed, I'm happy to take the damage, but I'm not kind of planning on getting that amber. I'm not kind of looking to secret needle my own bad penny, if you will. I'm saying, okay, here's a Witch of the Wilds. Here's a Gatekeeper that's captured a whole bunch. Here's a Tesmal. Like, you can leave it. It's great, but if you don't, then I'll take the amber as a plan B, and that works out pretty well. And I'm generally going to have more of these must deal with targets than you, or I have the recursion to keep replaying them, or my removal acts in such a way that I'm not giving you the advantage, whereas from Soul Snatcher, whereas your removal more likely is. So again, looking at this deck, I've got a Hysteria and the Double Nature's Call along with the Glimmers. I'm really hoping to take their threats off the board with bounce, as opposed to through fighting or damage and destruction. Whereas I'm kind of assuming that they're going to be fighting in or board wiping and giving me amber that way. But you know, if all the Soul Snatcher was, hey, don't fight my guys, you know, that's fine. I would kind of be happy with that. I see it as more of a rattlesnake to protect the plan A and give cover than an active component in the plan A. Mm-hmm.
Rattlesnake is an interesting way to describe that kind of passive Soul Snatcher deck. I like that.
Yeah. Interesting too. We saw Soul Snatcher get used a fair amount in a week or an event that ABR ran, or one of the weeks of ABR 7, I believe, the past season, the Artifact Week. So this was ABR
6.
6.
It was one that I did not participate in. ABR 6, I think it was.
Okay.
Not last season.
Okay. But anyway, the premise of this week was bring whatever deck you like, but also you get to choose one of these double-sided artifacts to have in play kind of indefinitely. We did see Soul Snatcher get used to great effect with a lot of decks that are maybe just wanting to spam creatures, and you dare your opponent to deal with them. So this is kind of along the same route. I remember because this was our Cyberclone RB team where I got to team up with the wonderful KeyForge, and I think. Oh no, that was an autocannon deck with Darnas that they got to use.
Just gonna ask if autocannon, Soul Snatcher, Bad Penny, if that emerged during that week.
It was the thing on folks' radars. Yeah, because you could add either the autocannon or the Soul Snatcher. Both of them are double-sided artifacts that were valid to add. I don't think we had one that could really, really make it worthwhile. But we did have a really cool deck with, I think it was triple or quad Darna, I forget, that really took advantage of autocannon. That was pretty fun. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not play that season, and it sounds like I missed out on a lot of artifact shenanigans.
There were shenanigans.
All right, so back to kind of a regular deck that's not necessarily always going to be playing it like you talked about with Carl, and not one that's like kind of a backup plan here with Murphy, or maybe it is relevant here with Murphy. What situations are you looking for that might make you say this is time to discard it, or this is when I really need to play it?
Yeah, good question. I think the times when I'm least likely to play it would be when I'm behind. So maybe and behind in specific ways. So behind on keys, very likely behind on board. But really when I'm in a situation where I can't be affording to give up any amber, right? And not just like, hey, I need to find my miasma or something. It's like, oh no, if you get to check, or if you kind of have the Soul Snatcher on board, you're going to be exhausting my key or my check stopping abilities in a way that I can't handle. Um, and I think that's kind of broad, but that's kind of what comes to mind. I think the times when I most want to play it are, you're getting to the end of the game, and you really can't be affording to give your opponent that firepower or additional ways to generate the final amber that they need to get there. I don't know. Does kind of sound right or?
Yeah, I think so. I think in less obvious situations, like say if both players don't have a board, like, and you get the Soul Snatcher and you're trying to figure out like, is it okay to play this even though there's no board? Or maybe you're going to follow it up with a creature or two, you're thinking it looks like it has immediate value to you. I would still also think about like what kind of creature control is left in both players' decks. If you're like partway
Mm-hmm.
through a deck, you might have seen already some of the things they've had. Maybe they've played most of their creatures already, and you know that the bottom half of their deck is going to be more action and artifact heavy as opposed to creatures. You might think about that in context of that. And if you need your board as well, I think I don't know if that makes a big difference. If you need your board and you play the Soul Snatcher, you're more likely to retain the board. They don't really want to take care of those creatures as much, and you might get some extra value out of them. Um, I definitely have been noticing more myself of using the board that I have in front of me in the matchups that I have, and rather than cycling through the deck. And
Mm-hmm.
I think perhaps with Soul Snatcher, if you have some creature control coming up or some board wipes coming up at the end, you might say to myself, like, okay, like I know I'm going to draw like a Spirit's Way or something later on. So let's use this disc now while I can and just reap again for another turn and maybe just draw a single card.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that I'm going to play that Spirit's Way and gain another three or four from it in a turn or two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it makes good sense. So you're kind of taking stock of the game, looking at the current situation, what's coming up, and you imagine, okay, if I win this game, or assuming I'm gonna win this game, what does that look like? What does the path look like? And if there's a whole lot of destroying their creatures, or if my board is critical to it, that's gonna have some import on whether or not I'm playing out the Soul Snatcher. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, and also like if you are playing one with like a miasma or a doorstep or TMTP or whatever, then you have to think like if you've already passed those in your deck, it might be a better idea to pitch it because if their board does get out of control and you can't handle it, you might just lose no matter what, whether you wipe it or if you don't. Um, if you have the miasma, for example, you're at least able to handle their board and maybe keep them off of a key three, while you kind of recoup a little bit and catch up and possibly forge your third. So those are the kind of the cards like that I think are going to make a difference if you're going to play it or discard it when you're like partway through the game or kind of evaluating the board state.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Murph kind of agreeing, maybe tongue in cheek, with something I said that was maybe tongue in cheek, of the Snow Snatcher being a sort of a win more card. It's interesting because I think there definitely are cases where it is it is a win more card, or it plays out in sort of a win more way. Um, I also think there are plenty of times where, especially as more of a rattlesnake type card, it can negate or nerf the comeback potential from an opposing deck that has fallen behind on board. So maybe in other games where it's really easy to protect an advantage and convert that into a win. I think KeyForge sees a lot of back and forth swings, and that's pretty natural over the game. It's not like I have to get to 6 amber or 6 mana to play a board wipe, or 4 mana to play a board wipe. I play it if I have it, and we kind of move on with the game. And there's this ebb and flow that can be sizable, right? And the Soul Snatcher adds an extra cost to that might not be payable by some decks looking to use those board wipes to get back into the game after another deck's really gotten wide.
Do you think in that context, it's kind of a little bit of anti-creature control?
It can be used as cover in that way, yeah. So and to the way that it was utilized in the ABR6 league, right? So you saw a lot of these high creature count, Big Star Alliance and Saurian decks that just wanted to jam dinos and jam Kirby's and Commander Chan's, and just say like, hey, like here's 10 creatures. I'm gonna be getting a lot of value out of this board turn over turn, and if you finally manage to deal with it, I'll collect my 10 amber and start again. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
So do you think it is a win more card, like Murph suggests?
I think it can be, and I think that's part of what makes it so interesting. Um, Part of what makes it interesting, I don't think it's totally cut and dry. I think there are situations where it's just bad. I think there are situations where it does function as sort of a win more, but I think there are plenty of situations too in decks where it it turns a deck's game plan from meh to more competitive, and
Mm.
there's a significant difference there where you weren't winning without the
Yeah.
Soul Snatcher on board. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like I don't think it's always going to be a win more. There are definitely some games where like you're ahead and you have a giant board and you drop the Soul Snatcher, and then they're damned if they do, damned if they don't wipe the board. So in that case, um, maybe it's a win more. Maybe it just kind of solidifies your position. Doesn't really give them an opportunity to come back. So I think it's a little bit different. I have one other question for you, that was on my list at least. I am a huge fan of Whirlpool, as everyone knows, and it's hard to find a Whirlpool deck where it's still good if it doesn't find the Whirlpool, or it's still good if the Whirlpool's canceled. I don't know if I feel the same about Soul Snatcher, and I'm curious what you think. Like Carl, for example, is a deck that you say loves to play the Soul Snatcher every time.
hmm
Is that a deck that's going to still play well if the Soul Snatcher is card number 36 in your deck?
Well, short answer, no. I mean, it punches in a different weight class when it has the Soul Snatcher versus when it doesn't. Now, that having been said, Carl still plays like a decent mid-range, you know, Coda deck that has the artifact control, board control, amber control, and decent amounts of amber generation. So it's playing a reasonable game, but definitely at a different weight class. And I think, we have somewhat of a self-selecting list that we brought up here. These are decks that we handpicked for their utilization of Soul Snatcher in one way or another. So, if you take the Soul Snatcher out of Carl, you've kind of taken a magic spark. And that's probably going to be true for most of the decks we picked. But I think that as a general rule, there are classes of those decks that are going to function pretty much as well as they would otherwise without the Soul Snatcher. Murphy being one that can function just as well with or without. It likes to see it, but it's not operating at a significantly reduced capacity without that Soul Snatcher. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do you think? You got anything else? Or you want to play some Soul Snatcher games and kind of see something in action here?
Ooh, I think it'd be a good time to play some Soul Snatcher games. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of pull a fast one on you and play a deck that I did not give you earlier, so you haven't heard me talk about it. It's got a lot of the same qualities we've talked about here. It's one that I have kind of struggled to get it to click so far, but it's got a lot of the synergies you guys will recognize when you watch it. So I'm hoping to learn something with it the more I play with it.
I'm gonna pull a fast one on you and play Mademoiselle Alapan. And no, just kidding.
No, actually, that would be cool.
That
We
would be
should talk
funny.
about that one too during this game.
hmm
Aviator played it, and Kagi I mentioned. It was a really, really interesting deck. I played against this deck whenever I had Guadalupe, the periodically spiky, which is a Dark Tidings deck with pretty limited creature control. It has like an infighting, a final analysis, and Thin the Herd is like pretty much it as far as the
hmm
creature control. And it has a submersive principle, but it's very difficult to try to take advantage of the Soul Snatcher. And so it was just a really, really fun matchup, um, back and forth with this, and kind of, you know, the Axiom play into the Crassosaurus was huge. and then there's like the tribute and the scudum for it. I mean, it allowed for a lot of Soul Snatcher shenanigans. And I was there for it. Like a final analysis into a data forge, like after you gain all that amber, some
Ooh,
cool stuff like that. Like it was just such a fun matchup, a lot of strategy involved. I really enjoyed playing against this one. Definitely one of my favorite Soul Snatcher decks, and it's a double, so that's even better.
double Soul Snatcher. So cool. Yeah, and love seeing decks that can also abuse a Crassosaurus. Yeah, really cool. The Bullet Bills had this in their lineup for the Swindle Team event. I played a practice game against it. It was a lot of fun. They didn't end up using it in my match, but yeah, really cool deck. I've seen it around. I think I've got to see maybe one of your Kagi matches against it as well. Or maybe I'm just thinking I remember it. Not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure we've talked about it at least. I remember.
Hmm.
I don't remember what the details of the games, the match that I played. I don't even remember if it was a 3-2, a 2-1 win or a 2-0 win. I don't remember. I just remember having a lot of fun with it and talking about it with you guys afterwards. So
Very
you
cool
maybe
deck.
just be remembering that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in their KFPL League deck, so punches high.
I'm
Punches
gonna,
high.
I'm gonna fire up a game for us
Cool.
with password sloppy for you.
I'm gonna pick out a deck to play. Maybe Murphy or Vamstar. Maybe I'll play Murphy in honor of the Great Fudgenator in the chat. But before we let our audio listeners go, anything sign off? Anything you want to say?
No, just stay sloppy.
Nice. I like it. So let's see how the old Vamstar is doing here.
All right, I'm gonna turn off the stream here so I will not see your hand.
Murphy. I'm Murphy. Prefect Shielder. No, not that one. Murphy Bishoplands Protector. Too many Murphy decks.
Too many Murphys, right? Definitely agree on too many Murphys, man.
Oh,
Tell
snap.
you what. All right, good luck, have fun. So I am playing Leora Maze Pawn,
Ooh.
which is a Coda deck, Soul Snatcher. It has the scaling amber control that I talked about with a doorstep. It also combines it with an in-house board wipe and Two Spirits Ways. It has a gatekeeper as well to kind of help time that a bit more. And then some other fun stuff like a hecatomb to double dip on the amber gain from killing my own creatures.
Hmm.
And you have some discs there as well, so you'll be doing some double dipping there as well if we get this out. It has the miasma, which I think is big, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I haven't quite been able to get this one to click, so we'll see if I can have any better luck against you tonight. I probably won't. I think my losing streak is about 6 games against you on stream. Um, but we shall see. And there's actually two other cards in here that I'll talk about if it comes up in the game that are some rules clarifications with Soul Snatcher, something that I learned playing with one of my other decks. It's an interesting way that it kind of interacts with it. So
Okay.
there we go.
Very cool. I dig it. I'm going to run out a Tesmol and see what you think about that.
I'm cool with that because I got dealt with a Soul Snatcher, so we can actually have some evidence and some real
Ooh.
data going on. So got an Overlord Grekking and a Tenicus. Just discard my Arise. So let's see what your Tesmal says now.
Ooh, this is exciting. Hmm. It's tank time. Tank time.
Already, turn two.
Yeah. I think. I mean, this is kind of funny. All right, dis. We're gonna reap here, and I'm really tempted. Oof, am I gonna regret this? To say no shadows. I've done this like 3 times in the past 2 weeks too, where ever since that one game where I was like, oh, I'm playing dis, let me click dis or whatever. I've done that like 3 times since then. It's becoming my signature. My signature.
Distract you. Just gonna let you pick the house that you want to pick.
Yeah.
Don't worry about anything in my head. I'm not talking about Unfathomable right now. It's
Oh my gosh. Why do I want to click Unfathomable all of a sudden? All right, we're gonna say no dis.
So you
uh,
don't want me to Overlord Grekking your Tesmal. Is that correct? Oh,
uh,
Hysteria too. Okay.
I just want to gum up your hand a little bit, you know.
All right. All right, that's cool. Um,
But I'm gonna be
yeah,
real
that's
sad if you have that Relentless Whispers, you know.
I don't, but
Oh,
let's go Shadows and drop some creatures for you.
okay.
I hope you're not afraid of skirmish. I have lots of it.
I'm not afraid yet, but I'm gonna give you some monies. I
Skirmish
think
is a bit of anti-synergy with Soul Snatcher, isn't it?
a little bit.
Sometimes you want your own stuff to die.
It is a little bit for sure. So this is pretty fun. Yeah, let's go Sanctum. Let's give myself a Sanctum Tesmal.
Oh, nice.
And we're going to say still no dis for you. And
All
then
right.
we're going to charge in there. Okay. Okay.
All right. So you just got 3 amber there. I got a few from the Soul Snatcher. Not often you see a smite on a Tesmal and it survives.
Yep. Tesmal
Um,
getting in there. Fists up. Yeah.
let's just go to Shadows again. Drop the upgrade and steal one.
Okay. Pretty good. Pretty good. We are. Let's see. We stuck two disc creatures in your hand already with our Hysteria. Wow. Hmm. I mean, I am greedy. It's a flaw. All right, so let's go. Let's go into Untamed. We're gonna use one of these nature's calls to send back your asp, and put a camouflage on. Let's put it on the old Witch of the Wild. Seems pretty good. Okay, very nice.
Okay. Setting up the Glimmer Call. I know what that's like. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, that is a
really cool to play Glimmer out of house too with the Witch of the Wilds. It's really fun.
that is neat. Yeah. And oh wow, actually you've got like the Glimmer Stereo, the coveted Glimmer Stereo combo. It
Mm-hmm.
is rare. Now in Stereo has a really awesome um I think what does he have? I think it's an Untamed Hysteria and
Oh.
with Glimmer. And it's really sweet. It's a really sweet deck. It's so annoying to play against. Um so I have to assume you've got a Glimmer and you can just get back everything and then take it all back to hand. So I'm gonna not get greedy. I'm just gonna play out some cards, starting with a Glorious Few for just 2, which isn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will give you an Amber to a Spirit's Way to get rid of that Witch, and play a Gatekeeper.
Okay, seems pretty good. All right, now it gets exciting.
This is where the fun begins.
It is. All right, let's go into Dis. You know what's better than one Soul Snatcher? Two Soul
There
Snatchers.
we
All right, here
There
we
we go.
go. For the content. I don't know if that's good. I should have probably stopped for a minute to see. Probably stop for a minute to see which one of us is the better Soul Snatcher deck. Probably you. Maybe one Soul Snatcher was good enough. But we're gonna
We'll see.
say Reap with the Tesmal. No dis for you on the next turn. And I'm gonna use the Lash and play a Charette. Okay.
All right. I am just going to unload some creatures then, I think. And And question is, do I want to fight this charrette to give you one? I think I do. I want to get you out of the habit of calling dis over and over again.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a big boost for you, but yeah, I'm gonna have to do that.
Ooh, a good question from the chat. Does this mean that the creatures have two souls? Like, what's going on here? You know?
Uh, that's a great question. Who asked that question?
That was a Murph
Fudginator.
question.
That's a fantastic question,
Mm-hmm.
Fudginator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or is the same soul being taxed twice? I don't know.
It's great. It's a good one.
We'll have to leave that up to the KeyForge canon experts.
DataForge says unlimited souls. I'm going with that. I'm going with that. All right. So we're gonna go into Sanctum. We're going to do this Golden Aura Tesmal trick again. Uh,
Then,
again, was a lot of fun. So I now have a Sanctum Tesmal. It's gonna reap.
what's it gonna choose?
Ooh, that's a great question. So you get to use your Sanctum dudes no matter what, huh? With
I
that
do.
Sigil of
Yeah,
Brotherhood. Mm,
it'll cost me the sigil, but
it will cost you the Sigil. I can live with that. Okay, so that's a reap. And let's say... we still know you've got at least two discards in hand. Ooh. Did you find that Relentless Whispers or not? There's also the Gongoozle.
there are some answers.
There are some answers. I'm going to say... Oh, torn between Dis and Sanctum, which probably means I should be choosing Shadows. Let's go Sanctum. And I guess, yeah, make you spend that sigil. I'm going to play the Gatekeeper. Captures 2 and will get me 2 at some point. And Duma the Martyr. And that'll be my turn.
Right.
Okay.
Man, it's about time. You should have gone dis. I think dis would have put me back in another bad situation.
Hmm.
Um, I only have three dis in hand, but I need to dump them out of my hand. And I do need to spend the sigil this turn because I have to get rid of that Tesmal. I can't afford you to go back into dis next turn, tax me, and dictate my house again. So um, I am going to give you Amber back with dis.
Gimme that money. Gimme that money.
Yep. And I will play the Grecking back again.
Mm-hmm.
Pop the sigil. Um, fight. Fully heal it. Okay, fight.
Very nice.
You take two, and then reap. Would have been really nice to use the sigil on another turn, like whenever I could have fought with the Overlord Grecking or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the Grecking is one of the things I wanted to talk about with the rules things. I learned
Yeah.
playing Kyra that Soul Snatcher gives Amber to the owner of the creature, not to the controller of the creature.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't just poach all your creatures with the Overlord Grecking and then take all the Amber later. You'll still get it, even though I control the creature. So same goes for Collar, same goes for Lord Invidious, things like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting the first time I learned that.
Yeah, very, very cool interaction. Actually, coincidentally came up for me, and I think in a match against Alapan with a deck that had some sort of steel. I don't recall, but yeah, really cool interaction. Owner, not controller. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, this is an untamed turn. There will be a glimmer,
Hmm.
and I think the glimmer is going to get that Witch of the Wilds. Seems like a decent play.
You must have another Nature's Call already.
I might. I might. I might. I might have slipped before describing my plays too. I don't remember. Well, let's bounce this Overlord. Should we bounce the Overlord? I think so. I still have two more glimmers to find, but I think I do want to get it here. Which means, should I hold off? Yeah, let's get a Glimmer, a Disc Creature with the Grecking, and one of your Sanctum dudes. And we're going to work on gumming up your hands. And not going to try and rush to a check here, for better or worse. And I will hold that Glimmer.
Okay. I will gladly take that key. That's a pretty big one. So now I've got to try to discourage you from going back into Untamed. You've got both of your Nature's Calls down there, so your next Glimmer is going to have to take the call back. So let's go into Sanctum. Let's play back out both of these Protectrix.
Cool.
Let's fight off the Witch. Let's give you 2. And let's just reap for 1.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, the gumming up the hands. I do love it. I love the Glimmer Nature's Call combo. This is a really... I'm glad you played this one. This is interesting. I'd never seen this deck before. I like that doomy factor of it.
Yeah, it's got some doomy stuff going. Gosh, I think the last time I played this deck, there was a Gambling Down event that Aurora ran on the Timeshapers Sanctimony server. Man, it must have been 2 years ago, but this did really well. It was a lot of fun. It doesn't look like much on paper. It looks like a jumble. I mean, well, the Glimlock jumps out, but most of the other stuff looks just kind of meh. But it hangs together pretty well. All right, so we're going to go back into Untamed. A Glimmer is going to come down. We are going to take a Nature's Call. I think we're going to spend a Fang House. And fight into a Protectrix. So we're both going to get a couple here. Play the other Nature's Call. I'm going to bounce 3 of your dudes.
That means you have the second Glimmer.
Maybe.
You're careful not to bounce the Gatekeeper. Also smart.
But I will reap here. I don't think I get punished other than you having the doorstep. So might as well go for it.
Let's go Shadows.
Okay, Miasma time. Nice.
And I'm not gonna play that creature game anymore. Just discard some Shadows creatures here.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. Either digging for a doorstep or not, but the Miasma's great. And good call to discard your Shadows dudes so I can't come up your hands with those. Yeah, very nice. So in that case, I'm going to move some cards here. I'm going to play this Lion on the right. Give it taunt and some additional armor. It's going to be a nice spot for my Witch of the Wilds to take when it comes back.
All right. So you got that gatekeeper still. Yeah. So I haven't had a big sanctum board in a few turns, but I would have loved to have been able to use that
Mm-hmm.
sigil in a situation other than having to fight twice. But this is definitely a tough spot now, being being down like this. It might my hand might be forced here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm just gonna go sanctum. Um, Thinking about the order here. All right, so let's just do a doorstep,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think I want to give you the key. Much as I might like that gatekeeper money back. I'm just gonna reap and then discard my sanctum creatures this time.
Oof. Okay, very cool. So we forced out one doorstep. Still another one coming. From 13 amber to 5. Brutal. I like it.
I think you've miscounted my doorsteps.
Did I? I thought you
I
had
really
2.
wish I had two.
Oof. All right, that changes the
Yeah,
math here.
yeah. I have two spirits way. That's probably what you were thinking.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, that makes things a little bit easier. Um, we are going to lash. We will
Yeah, I
call
wish I
the Shred. Mm-hmm.
wish I could have got my Tentacus out, but wasn't able to go into dis that turn. I couldn't afford to let you sit on 13.
Yeah, 13 was a lot. And the Forge would have been rough there. And then Exhume is
Yeah.
going to get me my Witch of the Wilds back. Okay, Lash will prevent your Forge, sitting at 8. All right.
Yep. And I drew poorly that turn. I drew two of my remaining Sanctum cards, and there weren't very many Sanctum left, and that really
Oof.
leaves a lot of my impact cards still sitting in my deck. And needing to forge twice now when you have 10 already is going to probably be the difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a ton of amber control left. So you have another glimmer with the two nature's calls. Don't think I can get around that at all. So this is dire. And this is a place where I really wish I still had the glorious few, but it was in my opening hand,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a card I was going to hold on to. Let's uh let's just use the sanctum, get it out of here while I can. Reap with that and inspiration. Oh, it's stunned. How about that? Awesome.
Yeah, interesting how the the Soul Snatchers there kind of. I mean, I'm not sure if you had the other spirits away, but turn that from
No, I
an
didn't.
out to being, yeah, not really an out. Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't have it, but certainly could not have played it. I don't think I could have.
All right, let's
I mean,
go.
it's basically a race for me at this point anyway. Last turn when you were sitting on 10, I would have needed to somehow forge two in two straight turns and take you off check here. I don't think I can do either of those things, so I have a great dishand now, but it's a lot of the cards that I needed earlier.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, let's go dis here. We are going to use the slash again. We are going to
Fudge asking how big of a factor the two Soul Snatchers have been. I would say it's pretty big. There were a few turns I wanted to fight off some of his creatures, but I didn't want to give him a key. Um, I haven't been able to kill my own very much, and the Nature's Calls I think really made a huge difference. Um, it's really interesting having a deck like yours with so much creature control that is not about destroying. I
hmm.
think that's like a really interesting aspect to this being a Soul Snatcher deck. You're building up your own board and removing the opponents, and they're not getting any amber. And if they need to handle you eventually, they're going to have to kill you. So that's another interesting aspect of Murphy, I think, here.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you can't see, but the folks on stream are laughing at me right now for having three alpha cards in hand and untamed and jumping to use the lash. Womp womp. Funny.
Well, oh, I see what you're saying. You could have played the Glimmer. I see.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, you should be losing this game, and somehow you're not.
I should be. I used up all of my bad RNG earlier this week. It was rough.
Yeah. Well, I don't got anything for you here, um, except a Gongoozle. Let's see if I can hit something good. Obeyed. All right. Let's send you back to Sanctum for no good reason. And drop some useless creatures here
Hmm.
and call that a good game.
Oof, good game.
Yeah, this deck, it has a lot of the synergies that I talked about, but it kind of comes up in games like this where it's one of those zero F or negative F coded decks where if things don't fall in the right order, it feels pretty flat overall.
Yeah, so maybe, I don't know, lacking some tools to position itself to really take advantage of those synergies, or I don't know. The spirits ways are really interesting, right? Because it feels like if you are able to pull ahead early, um, if you're able to pull ahead early, then maybe you can maintain that. But I don't know. It's interesting. Interesting. And you do have some high
Yeah,
value creatures that you'd like to see protected. I mean, the succubus, the shaffles, your charrette, even things like Umbra and Moon Cursor or the Nexus could have been impactful, and another deck that wasn't relying on Nature's Calls for board control would have struggled to get them off board um, without giving you too much value from the Soul Snatcher.
yeah. I don't know. I didn't gain probably more than I would say 6 amber from Soul Snatchers this game. Is that
Hmm.
probably about right? Um,
Be-
so I mean, it was a factor for me. Like there were a few times it changed my decisions what I could do against you. Um, but like we talked about, you had a lot of that bounce to hand, which was super effective in this game.
yeah, getting to clog your hand too as a lower F deck seemed like it was a big factor. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The control of the week earlier would have helped me get out of that rut, I think, and kill the Tesmal, or get around it at least. But that was not to be. A collar on it would have been even more. I mean, geez, the collar on that could have been a game changer, I think.
hmm,
But you know, that's
yeah.
KeyForge.
That's KeyForge. A caller on the early Tesmal could have been lights out because you get it ready. Yes, You get the
Yeah, you do.
yeah. So wouldn't be like I'd get to go right into Untamed and then bounce it. Um, I,
No, but you did have a Hysteria early, and I don't think I would have gone straight to Dis, like call Dis with it against
mhm.
you, and so you could have Hysteria it and taken it back anyway. But um, so you had some answers.
Some answers. I mean, the hysteria is a card, an answer. The pain reaction, I guess, might maybe somewhat situational, but yeah, getting locked out of the Untamed there would have been tricky.
Yeah.
Mm.
So the losing streak continues.
Mm, mm, mm.
I
Uh
have to remember to never play meaningful games against you on stream.
oh. Or I think you may have no, we're even on league games. I think on stream. Yes.
No, my team very nicely reminded me this week of week one of ABR this season when I opened up the season playing you on stream for our 58 SASCAP match
Okay.
and losing.
Okay.
And they reminded me of that because, I was like, I said all I need to do was win one more game and we would have broken the tiebreaker. And they're like, yeah, you had to play JT on stream, didn't you?
Oh, too funny. Too funny. Yeah. It's amazing too, getting to the end of the season, and it's like you think about all the near misses and 1 point either way.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
it's like
mean, how many players do we have on each team this year? Was there 11, I think?
11, 11.
Yeah.
I should
So like
know. Yeah.
77 games your team plays over the course of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And for three teams to be tied for the last playoff spot, it really makes you think like it comes down to like a single game. And a lot of us like could have just won a single more game to have broken that tie, but we didn't.
I had some heartbreakers this season that are gonna keep me up tonight. We'll see, but
I started 0 and 3, so
okay.
um, I,
So you clawed your way
I
back at
fought
the end.
back.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I ended up 3 and 4, preserved my fantasy value for next year. So
Uh, I'm
we'll see if I
I'm
can
I'm
figure
angling
turn it around.
for a discount next season. So
What was your record this season?
I think I ended at 3 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll all be able to just pick all sloppy lab work. I think we were all like about 3 and 4, 4 and 3.
Ooh, not tonight. Killed it. She ended at 6 and 1. Yeah.
What else is new?
Yeah. Get out of here. Not tonight. She's gonna be
She, she
shopping for a new team, a less
she
sloppy
did
team.
not beat me in the fantasy league though,
She did
which is
not.
what we really care about.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All the cool kids underperformed in ABR Zoc. If you're try hard and you're just doing it wrong in ABR, I'm just gonna say that right now. No, I'm just kidding. We're very impressed with Not Tonight's performance. We aspire to your greatness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ooh, lost
All
twice in
right.
Archon week. Oof. Yeah. I won as a
Uh,
sub, but not on my own slot. So I'm bumping up
oh,
somebody else.
that reminds me. I wanted to ask you how the fantasy league handles subs.
Hmm. So in true fantasy fashion, we turn a blind eye to who's the person under the shell. So yeah, you get the points for the name on the scorecard. Yep.
Part of the reason why captains cannot play in the fantasy league because you could just be drafting players and be like, oh, I'll sub for this person who's a fake player. I'll sub for him every week, pick him on my fantasy team for 0 points,
You know,
and boom.
it's funny because when we initially floated the idea of the fantasy team among the kind of organizers, there was a lot of concern about whether captains should be able to participate. It's like, oh, is like mixed incentives, like, I was like, oh, whatever, like, okay, no captains, sure. And and now it's kind of the running joke about who was allowed to play and not. But
There ended up being one captain. Did they stay in it the whole time?
I, you know what, I can't remember if I pulled them out or not. If they
You
made it into
didn't
the
even
end,
care enough.
good on them. This is the beer and pretzels league of the beer
Yeah,
and pretzels league. So yeah,
exactly. Great way to put it.
yeah. So it's good times. Although I am looking for some improvements for the next fantasy season. So I'm gonna level up the points and maybe some other bells and whistles. And I do owe Duke. I don't know if how you pronounce it, Duck or Duke. Um, some sort of a prize. Congratulations to Duck for besting the rest in the fantasy league. Well done. Well picked. our hats go
Nice
off to
job.
you. Mm-hmm. Really cool. And uh, and I saw Zoc stuck into the top 10. So congrats to you, Zoc, as well. Hmm.
It's in the top 10 before you realized the error in the calculation.
We were double counting. You were just you. The fix was in
Just
indeed.
me. I was really excited. It's like, man, I started with 2 points in the first 2 weeks total, and then I ended up like in 10th place. Then I started adding up the numbers. And I was like, no, that doesn't make sense.
I had a moment of panic when you were like, it doesn't add up because I had spot checked a number of them and said, yeah, it adds up just fine. And turns out that yeah, I had some experimental info in our experimental code in your calculation. Yeah.
It's why captains are not allowed to
S-
play.
Yeah,
It's why
absolutely.
we can't have nice things.
As it should be. As it should be.
All right. You mentioned earlier for anyone watching, if you have some topics you want us to talk about, feel free to just let us know on the side, send us some DMs. But open to suggestions as well and future episode topics for things to talk about.
Hmm. We are looking to replenish our backlog of things as we hit in the new year. So yeah, send them on over.
Yeah, let us know.
Cool.
All right. I think it's bedtime for these old men.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with the Sloppy Lab. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Uh,
Thanks for watching, everyone.
bye.